Hello, and welcome to another episode of Be a Leader podcast, where we talk about current events in sports, military, and business. So we're still on the tail end of March Madness, and we're going to have to talk about Dusty May, the head coach of the University of Michigan, who took a team that was the worst in the conference and in 2 years won the national championship. How did Dusty May do it? We're going to talk about that. In case you don't know, he first came in national spotlight when he took a mid-major team, Florida Atlantic, to the Final Four. A team like Florida Atlantic, the only way they make it to the NCAA tournament is to win the conference. So it's very hard to get in. But he took that team from a field of 68 all the way to the Final Four. And then a few years later, because that happened in 2023, a few years later, here he took University of Michigan to the national championship game and was able to win with the University of Michigan. So, how did he do it? What is his background? What are the secrets behind him? What are things that we can learn from him? He's got to have something unique that we can learn and emulate for ourselves, because we're all focused on the results, aren't we? How did Dusty May take this team from the worst in its conference, in its league, and make it national championship? Let's see. We're going to look through 5 different things. So, the first one is going to be his system. Dusty May has a system. He knows what it is. His players know who it is. His coaches know what it is. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about his system, what makes it unique. The first part is he's not focused on hype. He's focused on specific type of players that fit within his system. Okay. And the other part about that is his belief that the right people in the right environment can make something special. Why is this unique? In sports, often the focus is on finding the very best talent. If I get the best players and put them on the team, they're going to be the best team, right? It's not true. There's countless examples, but chemistry is important. How they play, their style of play, does it complement? Is it important? But it is a very easy trap to say and focus on, I got to get the very best talent. I've seen this in the military. I've seen it in sports. I've seen it in business. If we just go after this person, it'll fix everything. And here in this environment, Dusty May is countercultural. Okay. He's saying, no, I don't need the best players. I need the right people that fit my system. So we're going to highlight 4 players really quickly. Maya was a 7'3" Spaniard player that was at UCLA. Wasn't really being utilized as a big very well. Entered transfer portal. Dusty May brought him in. He's very good with skilled bigs and makes them better. Maya was fantastic in the whole season. Another one, Johnson. He was a backup player at Illinois, a bench player mostly. Didn't play a whole lot. He went to transfer portal, underutilized. Michigan, Dusty May brought him in, made him a star player, starter, and fantastic player. Another one, Cadeau. He was supposed to be a star player at North Carolina, but he just never bloomed, and he pretty much got kicked out of North Carolina with the assumption that, hey, you can't shoot. Well, he showed differently this season as he integrated the team and became a great player and ended up winning the MVP for the Final Four. Good on you. And then Yaxel Lendeborg, we've talked about him before. He was a junior college player that ended up playing for a mid-major in the state, somewhere in the state of Alabama. And then he came to Michigan, and his 1 year on the light became the best player, or player of the year for the conference, for the Big Ten Conference, and led the team to the national championship game. 4 players, all underutilized, not star players, underutilized, who needed a different environment. And Dusty May invited them in because he felt like they were the right people for that structure and built that. Again, his belief, the right people in the right environment, amazing things can happen. That's part of the belief. And that's part of the identity of who he is. And he does that and aligns those behaviors and invites them and coaches them and trains them and leads them in the game, and the results speak for themselves. And part of this also in his structure is how he coaches basketball. The structure for his offense is very simple and it's very clear. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit, but it's a very simple structure that the players operate in. They also know that it's a defensive-oriented first team, and they want to score as much as they can off transition, easy buckets on offense, but it's very simple. We'll talk about that here in the next point. And we got to come here. We look at the structure. Okay, here's the thing about structures. Behaviors fit within the structure. They're supposed to fit within the structure. If you have a structure, they behave according to what you're planning. But if you don't have a clear structure, the behaviors can be all over the place. Part of good leadership is defining a very clear structure and making sure behaviors are in line with that structure. And not only has Dusty May demonstrated that he can have that consistency in behavior, but he's also been able to show in 2 different schools of completely different calibers the fact that his structure works. gone to 2 different Final Fours, 2 different teams, spread over a few different years, and he's found success. It's very remarkable. Well, so structure, it's very clear. He knows it, he works it, he finds it, recruits it, he coaches it, and it's working. So first thing we can take away from it. The second thing are habits. Aligned with structure comes standards. Okay. Inside that box are standards and habits we have. Standards are saying these are the things that we need to live up to, which creates habits. And we are our habits. I've talked about this before. Culture isn't what you put on a wall. Culture are the things that you're known for. A team, how can you describe a team? Well, the way you describe a team is their habits. We're known by our habits. We are what we do. And here is an interesting story. When he was at Florida Atlantic, again, this is a mid-major school. These schools, it's so hard to go to the NCAA tournament. But he challenged his team with standards, but also the idea of these habits. And the idea was, what are the habits we need to be a March team? So he had this big banner on the wall that he put on that said March habits. Part of it was them aligning to the identity that he had. The identity is we are becoming a March Madness team. We are becoming an NCAA tournament team. So he's inviting them that identity, and then he's matching those behaviors with the standards that leads to the results. It's my IBR framework that I've talked many times, identity, behavior, result. That's what he was doing here with his team. The irony in all this is that he was able to take Florida Atlantic to March Madness for the NCAA tournament. So that banner worked well, right? They aligned it with those habits. So March habits worked until they went to the Final Four, which happened to be on April 1st. And then they lost that game by a bucket. And then he realized, well, maybe I should update my sign from March habits to April habits, which is exactly what he ended up doing at University of Michigan. He updated that identity to April habits. And we've heard players talk about, we've heard him talk about that placard, that sign that he has. And that invited them again to step into that. Again, here's the thing about goals. Many people think about goals as something that I will get to eventually. One day, I will be a March Madness team. I will get to April. That's not the right way to go about goals. Goals is not a place to get to. It's a place to come from. So how would that sound? Well, not one day I will be a March team. It's saying, what are the teams that are March doing? If I became an April team and made it to the Final Four, what are the behaviors I would be doing in April? Let's do them now. Let's do them now. It's a place to come from. And a quick story on Yaxel Lendeborg, again, was a mid-major JUCO player, mid-major, played 1 year at this higher level at Michigan. And early in the season, there's a drill, we call them spot shooting, where you have spots around the court, but you got to make so many before you advance. Oftentimes it's 2. Sometimes you just got to make 2 out of 3, 2 or 4. The moment you get 2, you move on. This one particular was 5, but it was 5 in a row before you had to move on. And the story goes that Yaxel had to spend, he said it took over half an hour to get past that one spot because he wasn't used to shooting 5 3-pointers in a row, making 5 in a row. And so what it did was force him to step into some new standards. And before, he was previously considered as not a 3-point shooter, not a 3-point threat. But because of the new standards that he had to step into, it created new habits. And that was shooting a lot of 3-pointers and making a lot of 3-pointers because you have to move on, which led into his game changing. By the NCAA tournament, he was a killer shooter. He was a fantastic shooter. All that changed because he entered in this new environment where Dusty May challenged his previous identity as a non-3-point shooter and helped him become a 3-point shooter by creating standards that created habits that created who he was. It was a very, very amazing story. So standards help define identity. It's no good if you don't have standards. You need to have standards, okay? If you don't have standards, then people do whatever behaviors they want. Okay? But you got to define the standards. You got to keep the standards because if you don't keep them, what good are they? The Marine Corps has very high standards compared to the rest of the branches because we have a very specific mission. We're the expeditionary force in the world. We have very high standards. You can't reach the standards. You can't continue. Go to another branch or it's time to leave, right? If you were once in the Marine Corps. I unfortunately at some point had to leave the Marine Corps. It is the hardest thing to do when you're no longer wearing the cloth. But you have to reach the standards. It defines the identity of who you are. Okay, so what standards are you setting? Do you have standards? Are you enforcing them? Are you living up to them? Are you being the example? Are you emulating the example? So let's go to the third point, and that's going to be player empowerment. Okay, This part of the structure that Dusty May has is he creates a lot of freedom with the players. How does he do this? Well, he has very few plays. And I can appreciate this because when I was with John Beilein at University of Michigan, John Beilein had a lot of plays. I think we would float right between the 60s or 70s amount of plays that we'd have by the end of the year. A lot of plays. Now, most of them are wrinkles of each other, but still a lot of plays. We know the call signs, we know the names, we know how to look at them at the sideline. Dusty May doesn't really do that. He has very few plays, right? Plays really just trying to get an action going. But outside of that, it's all about concepts. So they would run concepts rather than spending time on offense running different plays. He would spend most of his time in practice running the offense against different defenses to make sure they understood how to run the concepts against different defenses. So I think about this also in the Marine Corps. We're very decentralized. We have levels of leadership at every level. We want everyone to be a leader, but we also define leaders. Whether there's 2 Marines, there's 1 in charge. There's levels of leadership all across the board. Decentralized leadership and decision making. You always have your mission statement, which is your task and purpose, and you have commander's intent. And as long as you can achieve commander's intent, you've achieved the mission. Here's almost the same thing. Dusty May's giving up commander's intent. These are the types of ways we like to score. Let's practice on different looks within this concept, but as long as you achieve this, it works. There's a story also with Cadeau, remember that guard that came from North Carolina who was considered a non-shooter, came in and shot this wild shot, and Dusty May, rather than scolding him, he asked him, is this a shot we'd be taking in the NCAA tournament? If it's not, we shouldn't be shooting it now. If it is, then we need to work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it so that we are ready for those habits March and April. A very interesting way that we can take a look at how we give constructive feedback to our teammates, our players. Okay. So what was the result of this structure of that created freedom? Well, it created a lot of confidence for the players. It allowed them to make decisions quickly. Okay. It allowed them to play with freedom. It's so hard to be your best when you're just tight, when you're worried about making mistakes or you're worried about being judged. If you're given a playbook and you're allowed to play the game, like, tell me the rules of the game. Then I can play. If I don't know the rules of the game or the rules are changing, it's going to be very hard to play with a lot of freedom. That's why when I coach my own basketball players, I tell them, I show them the shots that are good. And I say, shoot the shot, whether you make it or miss it, we can't control it. But if you're taking the right shot, that's all I can be happy about. Give us a chance to score. And so here it gives them a lot of freedom and to play. And it was interesting. Dusty May got interviewed right before the national championship game. And he was asked, are you nervous? How do you guys feel? He said, we're prepared. Our body of work for this whole season is going to show in this game. Whoever's the most prepared, it'll show. We're ready to go. He didn't demonstrate anything in his body, in his emotions, his facial expression that he was nervous. He just knew that he had prepared his team. As a leader, he had prepared that team to go in the national championship game. And fortunately for him, the results did show. Go Blue. Okay, that leads to the 4th point. Calm under pressure. Dusty May is very calm under pressure. You watch him on the sideline. He's not going back and forth. He's not getting emotional. He's not jumping up and down. He is that stable anchor for his team. This age group, 18, 25 years old, they're going up and down. We probably remember when we did too. And especially with the pressure of the games, the nerves of the games, you need a leader who's consistent, who's reliable, where you know where he stands. That's what Dusty May provides in these tight games, a lot of stability. I've mentioned this before. Pressure, you don't rise up to the occasion. Pressure is going to expose your character, your identity. And in these pressure situations, it reveals that he's very grounded. He's very stable. He's very focused on leading the team within the structure that he's built. Okay, he is the heartbeat of the team because no matter how crazy they go, how badly they might perform for stretches or games, he's still that steady heartbeat of the team. Okay. Here's something to think about. Your emotions get reflected. I talk about how emotions are contagious. Okay, it spreads to the team. As a leader, as a coach, as a Marine officer, my emotions would be reflected on the team. I see it mostly in basketball because basketball for me is this thing I do on the side. And so I've had all whole day responsibilities and then I show up later in the evening. If I come in tired, my players play tired. If I come in frustrated, my players will play frustrated. If I come in with a bunch of energy, my players come in with a bunch of energy. It is crazy to see how they reflect me. And another side point on this is being inauthentic also doesn't work well. I've been in situations where the coach is trying to all this hype, but it just is not him. You know it's not him. And the players don't buy that either. And in the same sentence here, when I think about challenges with players and how they show up, it is so easy for a coach to say, oh, he didn't show up. He didn't do his job. It's his fault. And that is a moment every time when I hear that, I call that out. And when I feel that, I call it out myself. It always comes down to a leadership problem. Almost everything comes down to a leadership problem. Okay. And in this case, if you're not getting the most out of your teams by them showing up, their effort, their intensity, their focus, you have to look in the mirror first. Every leader should always look at the first option of the issue being you. Look in the mirror. Figure out what you're bringing to the table because your team is going to reflect you. Okay. And so here with Dusty May, shows a lot of composure and calmness. He's a professional. He prepares. He empowers his team, and they reflect that in these games. Another reason why they're national champions. And where do you think he learned this? So that's going to go up to the fifth point here. We're going to go to his roots. And we're going to learn the lessons of leading as a serving leadership. Here's probably the thing that I love the most about Dusty May. Okay, it's no secret and it's obvious. Dusty May was not a star player in college. In fact, he didn't even play in college. He was a student manager for Hall of Fame coach Bobby Knight at the University of Indiana. I, too, was not a player. I was a star player. I didn't play. I was a star player in high school. In basketball and football, I won a state championship, runner-up in football, had a football injury, decided not to play college sports. I, too, became a manager for Hall of Fame coach John Beilein at the University of Michigan. The fact that he came from a different background, a unique background like myself, was the reason why I look up to him, right? John Beilein, I learned under him. He's a mentor of mine. Dusty May, I look up to him because his path is very similar to hopefully mine one day, okay? What you learn as a manager? We're going to spend a little bit of time here in the uniqueness of this. What do you learn as a manager? I'm going to focus on two things. The first one is you see everything, especially the managers at the University of Michigan. We're unique more than many other programs because we do have our hands in everything. It'd be scouting, it'd be recruiting, it'd be film, player development, practices, games, meal preps, strength conditioning, being at the front office, meeting with donors, meeting with recruits coming in, like everything. I would spend 40, 60 hours, 70 hours. I think my senior year, I was averaging 70 hours a week as a head manager on the basketball team in some capacity. School was a nuisance. I just wanted to do basketball all day, whether it was in the office or in the gym. Okay. I did everything. Well, the way I would say is the head coach obviously can't do everything. So he divides responsibilities to the assistant coaches. And the assistant coaches utilize the managers to get everything done. I saw everything. And so that's a very unique perspective, especially considering, well, we'll talk about that here in a moment, about being on the floor as a manager. But so that was the first one. You see everything. But the second thing is, as a manager, it's not about you. There's no highlight reel. Right? There's no strategy for you. There's no interviews. They're not posting your image on walls and social media. It's not about you. All that effort was not for you. The players, they were capped at 20 hours a week to be with any of the coaches. There was no rules for me. I worked my tail off, and I did it for them. I didn't even go pick up players sometimes from school, bring them over to practice, or I picked them up at midnight at 1 a.m. and take them to the gym to shoot, to get shots up. It wasn't about me. So I saw everything, and it had nothing to do with me, and all to do with service. It completely changed my perspective of leadership in my leadership journey. Dusty May, it shows how important those manager years for him have been. Because for him, he has an open door policy where he's open to hearing about anything from anyone. Whether it's watching film or getting suggestions, it doesn't matter if it's an assistant coach, a staff member, a manager, a player. He's open to all because he understands that all perspectives are important in their own unique ways. I'm telling you, there's a lot of uniqueness here because this is not common. He's also fortunate that he has 3 sons, but one son is a walk-on player on the team, and he's another son that's a manager. And of course, he's joyous of both having one as a player and one as a manager because he understands the value of these skills that you pick up as a manager. There is a myth that great players make for great coaches. Okay? It is a myth. I think it's a rarity that great players become great coaches. Usually the players that become great coaches weren't very great players and were on the bench a lot. Right? We see a lot of that. There's those more examples of players that came from smaller backgrounds. John Beilein was a player but came from a smaller school, smaller background. Right? But here's the thing about when you are a bench player. This is the reason why bench players become great coaches and why managers, we're starting to see more often now, are giving the opportunity to be head coaches to win. Okay? Not only Dusty May, we can also look at Mark Daigneault. He won recently with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the National Basketball Association, the NBA. He was manager at UConn. Look at that, UConn coming back here. Right? So when you are on the bench, I just want you to think here for a moment. If you're on the bench the whole game, you're on the floor, you're not focused about your individual assignments, you're not making these reactions and playing through the adversity that you have in the game. You are on the bench seeing everything. So you're getting the same perspective of the head coach. The only difference is the head coach can walk back and forth and yell, which is a lot of fun. But you're still getting from his perspective. So you see the whole game, both your team and their team. You see the head coach. You see how he makes adjustments. You see how he leads huddles. You see everything in the locker room before the game, mid-game, after the game. You are literally a fly in the wall. No Netflix documentary series can ever compare to the experience of a manager in a high-profile school with a big coach like this, because you see everything. And you get to spend so much time with the players that the coaches don't get, because the coaches are limited. Coaches can't go to open gyms. Coaches can't go to these random shoot-arounds. The managers see everything. As long as they're willing, right, working hard like I was, you see everything. And so when you get to see everything, you start to pick up the patterns of what works. It is a master's degree on being a coach because you see everything. And I think that's a big reason why Dusty May was so good. Going back to the whole myth thing, again, Juwan Howard, Hall of Fame basketball player in college, part of the Fab Five, incredible player. When John Beilein left to go to the NBA, he had the best team in the conference. Juwan Howard, great player, first time the head coach made that best team in the conference to the worst team in the conference. And then Dusty May came in and in 2 years made it from the worst team in the conference into national champions. So as a manager, serving, it helps you see things that you wouldn't otherwise because it's not about you. It's not about you. So there's a lot of power. Anyways, let's do our 5 takeaways as we wrap up this episode because I can go. So the first one, build environments, not just teams. We're not just looking for the best players. We need to build an environment and then find the right pieces that fit in that environment. That's something Dusty May was very clear on doing, and we expect him to keep doing it. Second, set standards and habits that reflect those standards of where you're going. Okay, goals isn't a place to get to, it's a place to come from. And that was the mindset. April habits. What are our own April habits? Third, structure creates freedom. When you know how to play the game, it allows you to have freedom. Dusty May has a very clear and simple structure and allows his players to play with a lot of freedom. And it shows in the games. Fourth, leaders set the emotional tone. The team, the people that you lead often reflect you. They reflect your energy, your emotions. He's a stable leader, emotional leader on the sideline. He's an anchor. That's a reminder for us, the power that we have when we show up with our teams. And the fifth one, service builds leadership. Okay. I spent most of my time focused on here. You see things differently when you're there to serve, and it's not about you, and it's very powerful. And those manager years were instrumental, fundamental. When I was able to correspond with Coach Krzyzewski from Duke, I asked him how important his military service years were. He says it was everything. I'm sure if I messaged Dusty May and asked him how important his manager years, he'd probably say the same thing. It was everything because you see things a different way. Service builds leadership. So, as we wrap that up, 5 quick questions for you. What kind of environment are you creating for your team? What standards do you have, and are you holding them? Are your people, are they able to operate and play freely or tightly? When the pressure hits, who are you? Are you the emotional anchor that your team needs? And as a leader, are you focused on yourself? Or are you focused on serving others, helping them reach their highest potential? Thank you so much for tuning in this episode. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about leadership. I'm very passionate about coaching, two things that are near and dear to my heart. Hopefully this is helpful to you. And I encourage you, chew on this. See how this can be useful for you. Share it with someone where it can be useful. And remember, no matter whether you're leading yourself, leading others, or leading leaders, be a leader. My name is Daniel Pinedo. Thank you. Until next time.